Good afternoon. Thanks. I see some of you are already on. I appreciate you joining us today for 7 tips to maintain employee loyalty in this time of furloughs and layoffs. Thanks for taking time on this busy Friday, and it is Good Friday for many of you. So I wish you a happy weekend of celebrating your family and friends at this time. So I see a handful of you. Hello, hello. I just do want to make sure that you're hearing my voice before we get to the top of the hour. So if anyone could send a note just saying, hello, I'm on, that would be fantastic. And I will look for your chats to come through. Can you hear me? That's the question. You'll see a little chat box at the bottom, and I just want to make sure that everyone can hear before we get to the top of the hour. Kim, can you help me there? Okay, thank you, Brian, for that message. I appreciate that. You have no idea how unsettling it is not to know if someone can hear or not. So we'll get ready to go at the top of the hour. Brian, where are you calling in from today? And everybody, if you would just take a second and just put in the city that you're calling in from, that would be great. Thanks, Kim. There you are. You couldn't get to the chat. Let's see. I'm going to open it up for everyone. Thanks for letting me know that. We'll get ready to go at the top of the hour. I want to open up the chat so that everyone can do so. Okay, I guess we're going to have to put them into the question box if you have a question throughout this presentation. I see several of you are already on. We will wait until my courtesy 201. Oh, Brooksville, Florida, fantastic. I've actually been to Brooksville, Florida. And I think I've been to your store, Brian. Is there a Cadillac store there too nearby, or is that somewhere else? Maybe that's it. Okay, I'm going to go on mute for just a second as the audience continues to build. And we will be with you at 2:01. Just so you know, a little housekeeping. Apparently the, let's see here, unlock pane from the control panel. Apparently you can put a question in, but you can't put a chat in at this point. I'm trying to fix that right now for you. Audiences can ask questions. And yeah, it shows that the chat's available, but clearly that's not working for some reason. Hi, Maria, how are you? Hand was raised. Great. Okay. Our audience is building quickly, and so we're going to get ready to go. It is now 2:01, and I want to thank you all for joining in today. There's a quote that we want to get started with, and actually, you know what? I'm going to go back one slide real quickly here because I think it looks like we have a little last minute change. So that's okay. This is live and we can be flexible. Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to 7 tips to maintain employee loyalty in this time of furloughs and layoffs. This is something our industry hasn't had to face very often. Maybe the last time some of you weren't even in the business. So this presents some very unique challenges for the industry and for the hardworking people inside of it, both the people that own these businesses, automotive vendors are on the call, as well as dealers, and for those people who have put their employment into the hands of the automotive industry. So with a great amount of compassion, but a great amount of help, let's go jump in and start helping with this conversation. I found a great conversation, a great quote yesterday, and I thought I would add it for you. This might be something that you want to take a picture of. Uncertainty is an uncomfortable position, but certainty is an absurd one. So when we think about that, what does that mean right now? Of course, many of us are uncertain with what's going on, and there's very good reason for that. This is an unprecedented situation. This is a turbulent time. People are getting hit from many fronts. But to think that you know it all, or to act as if you know it all, or make decisions based on everything as if you know it all right now, that would actually be absurd. But what we're going to talk about today are tips, best practices, insights to help you navigate this. I do want you to know, to make sure that we're all clear, this is a very fluid situation. Today is Friday, April 10th. I want it to be clear on this presentation that we're giving you the best information we can based on what's happening right at this moment. So thank you all in advance for understanding. If you all understand that, could you raise your hands just so I can see that that message came through loud and clear? Because we're going to try to give you timely advice, but we're not going to say that anything has permanence because of the fluidity of this situation. So if you see where to raise your hand, go ahead, raise some hands. That's awesome. I see those hands going up. So now let's go forward. Some of you know me pretty well, some of you don't know me at all. So just a brief overview on who I am and why am I delivering this message today. I'm the founding partner of Foster Strategies Group. We are a consultancy based on dealerships and vendors and the performance and their people. Very specifically, we do a lot of corporate training, and a lot of that training involves leadership development, and it involves client retention and employee retention. So as a retention and churn specialist, I felt it was imperative that I get out here and talk to you all about strategies that will work for you. Now, make no mistake, this is a quick phone call today. This is a quick webinar. This by no means would be a complete strategy. When I come out to a dealership or to a business, I spend 2 to 3 days gathering information, holding leadership meetings, meeting with your teams, and pouring through data so I can make great decisions and recommendations for strategies to go forward powerfully. So this is going to be general, but I hope you get an idea of the tone of the work that we offer and the care that we have for the people in the industry. So a few career highlights. I did sell cars. In 1998, I sold cars. And after 3.5 years of that, I swiftly went into management, managed stores across the Midwest and out in Boston, which was great fun. And then I had a dream job. I worked for Cars.com for 3 years as a national trainer and speaker. I had the privilege to speak to literally thousands and thousands of dealership employees every year for 3 years running, flew 120 cities a year. That was a ton of travel. But it was so encouraging to see those people who chose to spend their time, like you are right now, to stay at the tip of the spear and go back and take the material that we were sharing back to their store. And to hear the success stories always makes me know that we're doing the right thing. After that, I went on to AutoNation, spent 5 years painting the country with variable ops solutions and special operations projects, including change and process management. Did a lot of executive coaching over these years also. So I really bring this level of care and listening also, because to say you have a pre-planned program would be to have a one-size-fits-all, and one-size-fits-all winds up fitting no one. So I customize all of the work that I do. Now, I'm very fortunate, and I was trying to grab some interesting slides here and pictures, but I found out realizing I need some more photos. But I'm a respected and requested speaker and guest at conferences, at company events, on podcasts all the time, and I do a lot of my own work like this too. I've given you a highlighted list of some of the things that I bring to the market, from leadership performance to evolving the roles that we have inside automotive, transforming partnerships, and then also people strategies, women in automotive, change and crisis management, industry insights, and back to company events today. So here we go. I had planned on having Mike Cavanaugh here today. He is unable to make it at the last minute, but that's all right. We sure appreciate his help that he offered us yesterday. So when we take a look at disruption in automotive, this right now is something that we didn't even see coming. Who would have known that something so small could cause destruction at this massive scale? We thought this was disruption. Shared, autonomous, mobility, electric, digital marketing, online retail. But no, we're facing a much larger threat right now. So back to the stats. Here we go, and we have to take a look at, again, I will not have stats for you individually because I can't. I have businesses on here of all sizes, from all spectrums of the automotive industry. So you will not see a lot of stats here. What you will see are best practices, tips, and insights. For that kind of help, we'll have to go to work at a different level, but I am happy to take 30-minute conversations after this to try to get you on the right path. So that, I hope that explains why you won't have very specific stats today. But here's one stat that should actually stop you in your tracks and make you think. In this time that we're having all of these massive layoffs, according to Randstad, they're a huge employment and talent agency. Even after a 0.5% layoff annually, the average company can expect to see their turnover rate go from 10.4% to 13%. That's massive. That's a 25% increase in turnover, and that puts a lot of pressure off on all of the HR people, the managers, the onboarding process, and all of the companies that provide them services and benefits. You know, that's one thing if it was 25%, but in automotive, we currently are laying 15 to 50% off of our staff or more. And we already face extraordinarily high turnover levels, up to 65% annually before this. And so as tough of a pill as this is to swallow, we've got to really think about what is this going to look like. Part of the reason we're talking about this today is many people are only thinking about the employees they laid off or furloughed, if you will, but we have to look at that remaining staff, those still in place, the added pressures on them, what is their loyalty looking like, and how do we maintain and retain them in a healthy way also through this. We've also got to ask, who's going to manage this massive people migration? People out, people in, and who do you have for teams to handle that? So those are important things to start thinking about as we get going. Why right now? Because as we're having this conversation, it's good to have your real landscape in mind. Because if you get off this call and think, okay, we've got this strategy in place now without this component in mind, you're still going to struggle even with all of our best practices. So who's going to have a struggle here? Your people in HR. They are trying to get people to come back. They're trying to retain people. They have to do all the paperwork, benefits, onboarding. So your team in HR is going to need more support, more direction, and better strategies. Your training team, my goodness, what I've heard from many of my automotive dealer friends is their training team was the first team they let go. That's sort of a mistake, like cutting your marketing when things are off, but we'll talk about whether that's a good decision or not later. The fact, though, is if you have displaced your training team also, who's going to help you reintroduce your employees that are coming back, keep the employees that you have going, and help anybody new that you have to hire right away? These things take time. So I hear many people right now saying, oh, when we rebound, it'll be twice as big, twice as fast. And I'd like to give you a little caution there, as optimistic as I am. If that's the case, that can only be the case if you are completely ready before it happens. So something to think about. Now, your managers. Your managers, right now, they're putting in requests for more people, or they've got the people that they're letting go, or the people that are simply in a layoff status. And now they're going to be burdened with decisions, paperwork, and training and interviewing. Another thing we need to look at buckling is your employees that are still in place. We have a huge area that we need to be very empathetic towards, is those people that we kept on board. I've heard that some companies are taking the approach that, gosh, you're lucky to be here, so we're going to work you a lot harder, giving people extra jobs and cutting their pay all at the same time. We have to think logically about this. What is that doing to their morale? Do they just feel lucky like you think they do, or do they have some other ideas going on in their mind? And while I'm sure there is a large level of gratitude, there's also quite a bit of concern, and we can't put our head in the sand about that. Systems that you use when you're onboarding and offboarding people, those are all going to be complicated as well, as everybody in the country is doing the same thing. So be ready earlier rather than later. Online job boards too, they've gotten more cluttered, harder for your HR people to get through, and also harder for your message to get out there that you have great opportunities available. So I'm calling the activities that we're doing right now my Retention Act. Since I focus so much on retention anyway, I developed this ACT program, and that's going to permeate all of the retention webcasts that I'm offering. This act is your strategy and things you want to make sure to do no matter what the topic is we're talking about. And this will apply for those who remain and for those who have been displaced. So here are your logical steps with ACT prior to you taking any further action. Hey, don't worry if you've already done some things or maybe even think you made a misstep. You can reroute yourself to this ACT plan and start making these decisions based on this going forward. So the first thing is, our current state, events beyond our control, have created disruption on many, many fronts. That's okay. That's just what happened. It happened to everybody. Okay, but now what we have to do is say, we're going to strategize differently because we are going to be adults that sit in a room. We're going to take time. We're not going to overreact. We're not going to react too quickly. We're not going to go hide and pretend it's not happening. So we will use ACT, A-C-T, assess, communicate, and transformation. Some of you have seen my word transformation used a lot in transforming automotive partnerships, but in this conversation, we're going to talk about the transformation that should happen on the other side. Simply because to go from where we are right now to just getting up and running, that's just, that just would be standard. That would be anybody could or would try to do it. First of all of the same processes and people will not be in the same place. Second of all, if it's a time of massive change, this might be a time to introduce some much needed forward-thinking change and transformation for you, your people, your company, and your clients. So here we go. ACT. Let's start with the letter A. Retention Act, the first A is assess. The first thing you need to do is see what we've really got. We're going to go through these quickly simply because of time, and we will be going through each of these again later on future webinars. You'll also have a copy of this presentation after we're finished. Assess, making tough decisions. So first of all, take a look at what really happened. What happened and what did we do? Next step is anticipating what could happen next. You'll want to get your leaders and your team together, whiteboard it out, find out what is the landscape, what's gone on, and what would be natural things that we could expect to happen next. Inside of that, you might get a lot of creative conversation going and things that sound purely speculative, but that wind up being things that do happen. So start getting prepared for not just what has happened, but be proactive and anticipate early what could happen next. Then I want to ask you how confident you are about the current plan that you executed. How good are you feeling about that? Not just what you had to do in the moment, but the position that's put you in right now and maybe in your near future. And you will not hear me talking about future like 1 or 2 years down the road. Right now, we're going to keep the lens really close, and we're going to stay looking what we can see ahead of the windshield with our headlights right now. That's it. That's all we can do. So next, I would ask you, how are your leaders doing and how are they handling this situation? This almost gets into an emotional capacity here right now, but I think that's important to even think, like, because if we think that we have this great plan, but every leader is executing it beautifully, they might have their own thoughts, fears, concerns, lack of confidence. They might be looking for something else, so we cannot assume our leaders are all on board or they're all as emotionally strong as we need them to be right now. Now, assessing continues. We could talk for a half an hour on each one of these or even a day on a couple of these, but real important, get these jotted down. Analyze your data. Take a look at where you were, take a look at where you are, and then start to reset your data, reset forecasts and budgets, and ask yourself, where are the small wins that we can create right now? Also ask others internally and externally for their contributions and their thoughts on how to navigate this. Don't try to make all of these decisions by yourself or with a team of 6 or 8 in a closed room. Get other feedback. And also, when I say externally, I don't mean just call your other buddies in the automotive industry. I mean externally. Go to other businesses, other industries, read, listen, talk, hear what other people are doing. Next, I take a look at what are your available assets. What do you have that you are not leveraging fully right now? Just like many of you sell products and services to clients, many of you purchase products and services from clients, and you may not be using those currently to their fullest advantage for you. Next one, and this gets a little tricky, but what is your agility personally, as a team, and as a company, and with your clients? You've got to ask yourself, are we bound by bureaucracy or are we nimble, agile, ready to go and change with little notice once we have our plan in place? So assessing, analyze your data, ask others, check your available assets, and look to agility. Very important then that you employ your SWOT analysis. Take a look closely at your strengths right in this moment. What are weaknesses? Whereas many times people say, just develop and work on your strengths. Right now, it's time to spend a double measure of time looking at your weaknesses, because this could be something that could take you out of the market with any given client. So you do not want to have a weakness out there in the marketplace right now when things are this difficult. Next, look at new opportunities that are arising out of this, and of course, threats that would harm you, your company, or your clients, and especially your people. Next step in Retention Act is communication. Your meetings now, before you start any communications, it's so powerful for your meetings to be all internal before you start doing anything externally. So your meetings are going to encompass all leaders, all hands on deck. Whatever you decide inside those meetings, you need to print it, you need to email it, you need to share it, you need to make sure that everybody knows and everybody's hearing it from multiple sources. When your people read with their eyes something that maybe their manager is just saying to them on the side, their believability and their confidence in the material skyrockets. Minimum 200% more believability when they see the double share of hearing it and then seeing it in print. Next is all company meetings. Whatever's happening, your company is facing some measure of disruption. All company meetings are important, and you also have to look at how frequently should those meetings be and what should they be about. It might be that 4 times a month you need a meeting about one topic, 20 times a month you need about another, but you've got to find out the frequency and the cadence of those. And back to the leaders meeting, those meetings right now probably need to happen daily, if not every half day, to make sure that everyone's in the same place. We need to have our ears open for what our people are telling us is happening and our customers are sharing as well. Finally, and maybe most important, if you really want to make sure everyone's understanding the messages that you've put together and the way that you've set your sail to navigate the situation, have one-on-ones, because it's easy to assume that the people that are out there interfacing with your clients understood completely from the first wave. But like the operator game we all played when we were kids, this message gets misconstrued. And also when emotions are in play, they're interpreting your message one way based on their feelings about the situation. So it's imperative that your leaders are talking with each team member one-on-one. As you're preparing those messages, before you get ready to deliver those, it's very important that you consider your audience. Consider the audience that is your client. Consider the audience that is your internal team. So very important that you think about, like, what is this we want to say and how does this land in their world, especially against the expectations that we have of them. Make sure also that you have someone else reading through it with you to make sure that it is clear. Clarity is so important. It's easy for us to write something down and then someone else interpret it completely in a different manner. And if you don't think that's right, go check your text that you sent to your spouse or partner in the last few days. And look, but you said this, no, but I meant that. Well, guess what? We've got to make sure that there is no ambiguity and that clarity is king. Cadence, again, is important. You need to let your team know how frequently you're going to be talking to them. When it comes to content, you want to make sure to use a warmer than normal, that is warmer than normal, more kind, more thoughtful, a better tone than normal in your conversations with your team. Loyalty is at risk for all of your people, displaced or in place. So it's very important that you have their confidence in that content so that then they can take that confidence to the clients that they'll be interacting with, or for those people who aren't still on board, that they will have more confidence that you're really working hard to do all the right things and they'll have a safe place to go back to. So now let's talk about you. You're the leader. You need to practice this. Some of us, like myself, are professional speakers. Some of us, they have a very different job. And you know, you probably have an amazing job, but not many of us have the chance to practice this material, especially this content, very often. So first of all, there's the mirror at home. Use that, but also practice going through this messaging with your other leaders at the table until you all start to lift your confidence in how each of you are doing. You will also find out that there are a couple people that are really struggling here. You need to get them some help so that they can deliver this carefully. Because as we take a look at these next bits here, it's important to maintain the loyalty here, that you are managing expectations in a thoughtful manner. You're avoiding landmines. Some people overtalk and say things they shouldn't have said, or they give out information that they should not have, or they create more fear. And so it's real important that you help your people be able to deliver your messages in all categories. The words they use, the tone they use, their body language, their facial expressions, it's all important. Kindness and tone, we've talked about it a few times, but kindness and tone are incredibly important. Make sure it's not just what you say, but it's how you're going to say it at this point in time. And finally, as Mike said yesterday, the most important thing is that we're honest. They can see right through it and they're sniffing you out. Trust takes forever to build and it can be eroded so quickly with one comment that you make that you thought was in passing, that they thought they understood, and when they find out to be wrong, I don't know, you might never be able to get that same level of trust back. So being honest, being transparent is imperative right now. So our final letter of ACT is transformation. Transformation, we want you to emerge more stronger and more powerfully than you were before. There will be new opportunities after this, not just back to selling cars again or back to selling our products and services to dealers. There'll be new needs that arose, new opportunities for those of you who have your eyes wide open and your heads on a swivel and are watching everything. We will also be taking a look at it's time to either create new roles, maybe eliminate some, or change and adapt and adopt new role expectations. It's also going to be time to take a close look at your leaders. We'll talk about that more in just a minute, but leadership right now, just because someone has a role doesn't mean they're amazing at it. And it's important that we're giving our leaders the support that they deserve. First of all, making them aware of anything they need to work on, making making it accessible for them to get to information, but also raising our expectations on our leaders going forward. This is an ultimate time for transformation to happen in your organization. You also might want to look at payroll, compensation, benefits models. You might want to look at, oh no, not might want to, you definitely want to look at increasing your education, training, and expectations of that. One tip I'll give you that I would give if I was on site is you need to respect the learner so much that you tell them you expect them to learn this material and you don't need to repeat it. We hear a lot in the automotive industry about, I have to train them over and over again. Well, friends, I'm going to tell you, that's your fault, not theirs. That's a hard pill to swallow for some people. But as a professional trainer, I know that I get what I tolerate. And if I don't set them up with the expectation they're expected to learn X amount of things out of this conversation, I'm putting them at a disadvantage, and I'm setting myself up to look like I don't know what I'm doing. There are a lot of trainers out there who charge a lot of money, and then 5 minutes later, the people don't even remember what they talked about. You don't have to do that. You have better resources available. I train people to become adult learners and to become responsible for their own education so that they can leave any training session and go out and deliver and actually help others, and they start their own continuous learning process. I can talk to you about that later if you like, but let's keep going here. It's very important right now that you develop a people-first culture, your people inside, your people outside. We'll leave that as it is. You cannot say, though, that you have culture by painting it pink or saying, we're awesome over here. You've got to go to the ground level and see how the people, rank and file, are feeling your culture. Final part of transformation is getting close to home here. It's a good time for you to personally let go of how it was, let go of the tools and skills that you might have used before, and explore new options. It's time now for your leadership to be monitored more closely than ever, expected more than ever to be on a continuous improvement, because they're not just using binoculars, they're using a microscope now to look at your leadership. And it's also time, my friends, to exercise your courage. It's not easy to go through these things, and it's not necessarily easy to make changes in the middle of disruption, but if not now, when? Going back to business as it was would be the saddest thing that you can do, because we had a lot of things that we needed to work on, whether it was with our employees, our clients, our messaging to the marketplace, our marketing. We had improvements that needed to be made. Let's use this as a great cleansing and a great reset time. So I would ask you, you went through and you cut people and you got people taking more on. How have you communicated this to everyone? And who did those communications? And what did they say? And when did they happen? And how's your team doing with your strategy? Like, how is the strategy? Are they all clear on what's happening or not? And then I would ask, how are your leaders doing? And what are their expectations right now? And what are we learning from this? Oops, hang on, cancel that. I tried to cancel the webinar right there. Then expectations. What are the expectations that you have of yourself, of each other? And this would be a time, if you could jot this down, to go for small wins, because right now, while everything is collapsed, your Q1 and Q2 budgets are blown to pieces. You don't want your people in a mindset of scrambling all year long in a failing effort to try to catch up and regain what you couldn't either. So then we would take a look next at your clients. What is your strategy with your clients right now? So if I'm your client and you released my account executive, what's that going to go like? Or if I'm in a dealership situation and I'm your client there, what do I do when the person that I've worked with for many years, whether they're a salesperson, a manager, service advisor, what do I do when they're gone? So we have to make sure we have a strategy for our clients. Mike was giving some great reports yesterday on some things he has seen. I've seen some great things too, but we need to make sure those are not merely anecdotal, but they are permeating your company. Next, and very important, is taking a look at budgets and forecasts. It's time to do a little reset on where we were going to go and what we're going to do. Otherwise, you will all be feeling defeated all year long. And when we're feeling defeated, we make decisions out of desperation. And that usually means we spend more money than we should, or we give money away that we shouldn't have. So re-examine your budgets and forecasts, and let's redo those. Okay, we've already gone through a ton of material. Now we're right to the heart of it, because your greatest asset, now that we have our minds and our focus and our vision in the right places, and we know how to go about this, here's what we're going to do. We're going to go and we're going to take on the concerns about your people. These words are tough to read: layoffs, furloughs, staff reduction. No matter how nicely you try to paint this, they all feel the same, and they're all filled with ambiguity. So I take a look real quickly at these 7 items. You might have more, but let's take a look. These encapsulate most of what's going on. Has your organization had to make a difficult decision like this? If so, what's your plan to communicate? What's your plan for those people while they are off? And what's your plan for their clients? How are you going to choose who to bring back, and when are you going to do it? And what's your strategy as we begin to emerge from this crisis? And how is this affecting your own ability to do your job? And what should you be expecting of the team that remains during this time? All great questions to be thinking about right now. So let's preview our 7 tips to maintain loyalty in a time of crisis. Tip number 1, for your people who have been released, it feels personal. They are emotional. Please handle with care. Empathy goes into play here. Let them talk. Let them tell you their fears. Let them have a little frustration. Those are all very normal and easy to anticipate. Tip number 2, the burden now is on you, not them. Why would I say a thing like that? Well, my friends, it was hard enough to hire people before. Now you had this whole staff working for you, and you cannot assume for 1 minute they will all be there on the other side of this. Number 3, friends and family. These are truly the ultimate influencers to your employees' decision to stay working with you after COVID-19. Tip number 4, act as if you're hiring them and attract them all over again. You know how you talked about the company before they came to work here, what a wonderful career it was and all that. Well, just remember, now they know exactly what it's like to work with you, and they chose to stay even with knowing the full truth. But now that they're sitting at home and they feel a bit betrayed, we've got to ask ourselves, okay, I need to go back into the business of dating them all over again, if you will, wooing them, making it interesting for them to come back and work here. So tip number 5, keep your people motivated, those in place and those displaced. It's important to have a strategy to be communicating powerfully to your people at this time, and we'll go through some tips on that as we hit tip 5. Tip 6, review your leadership team, starting with you. Tip 7, become a best place to work. So tip number 1, it feels personal. They're emotional, please handle with care. I want you to pop through there, take a look at those emotions right now. I think I caught a lot of them, but I'm pretty sure I didn't catch all of them. Which one's sticking out to you the most right now? For those of you who have had to employ people, I'd like to take just a second here, and in the question box, I'd like you to put the word of the phrase here: sad, angry, hurt, confused, embarrassed, uncertain. How are some of the people that you've been working with feeling? So I'll wait just a second for some of your answers here. While I'm waiting for your answers, we'll go through them quickly. Sad, they feel like they're less than, they weren't chosen. It's like being not picked for Red Rover or dodgeball. Some might be angry. Why me? Why not so-and-so? How did that happen? After all I did for you. Some are hurt. Who decided to choose me, and how was that decision made? Some are confused. What do I do now? Some are embarrassed and have no idea what to tell their family or their friends. Some are uncertain. Will I even get called back? Do I want to? Some are worried, like really worried. How am I going to pay my bills? And it's very important you're empathetic to this right now, because many states right now their unemployment networks and platforms were not built to handle the massive influx of unemployment applications. The government is offering additional services, and I've heard some dealers say, oh, well, they'll just get that money and they'll be fine. My friends, that money is nowhere in sight right now, and those websites keep crashing also. They cannot bear the load, and there are no promises right now. And so we learned a couple days ago that the state has to be on board completely with the federal government's program before any of the people inside any given state will even start to be able to apply for those funds. So very important to feel empathetic. Then we have to ask ourselves, these messages that we're giving, how do they go to their receiver? Because remember, now that we understand that all of these emotions are in place, yep, I'm seeing some words here. I'm going to take a look at this for a second here. We're seeing uncertainty. We're seeing, yeah, a lot of people are saying uncertainty. Yep. Okay, very good. So we got to take a look right now as when you're giving a message, how is it playing through? Because it's not what you said that matters most. It's what they heard, how they interpreted it, and how it feels personally to them. So tip number 2. So tip number 1, let's be empathetic and remember they're emotional. Tip number 2, the burden's now on you and not on them. Don't tell them what they cannot do at this point. I heard of a large organization this past week, not AutoNation. Some of you saw me writing about my heartbreaking for AutoNation the other day. So this was not AutoNation, but it's another very large dealer organization. And they told their people what they cannot do during this time. My goodness, you let me go. There's no financial promise. There's no promise that I get to come back. And they're telling their people that if they do this or that or the other thing, they will not be reemployed. That's actually illegal, but I'm not a lawyer and I'm not an HR specialist, but I want you to know that should not be happening. Don't accept that. Do tell your people what you will be doing. What you will be doing, again, the cadence, what you can pay them, or when you do plan to bring people back and what that looks like, and just be honest. And if it's day to day, that's okay, but let them celebrate. Even if you bring, let's just say 3 people out of 33 that you have to let go, let them celebrate for those people and start to have hope and confidence that you will be calling them also. Next, it's very important that you track your efforts and their reactions also, like your life depends on it, because it actually does. Your business certainly depends on it. Tip number 3. Here's one that we fail to incorporate most of the time when we're hiring and when we have people on board. Most people leave their jobs. They don't get fired from their jobs. And when they leave, their friends and family were a strong influence in them making that decision. So accept it. You are now no longer, nor were you ever, the strongest influencer regarding their desire or their ability to stay working there. Here's who is: their spouse, their partner, their other family, that brother-in-law that keeps chirping in somebody's ear, their friends, their neighbors as they're out social distancing together apart, and former colleagues, and even future employers. One more hint: these people were always influencing your people. Remember this going forward, and I can share some communication tips like that later. So when you are writing these communications out, you want to make sure that you're even referencing, we hope your friends and family are well in this time of crisis. We appreciate that. We hope that you get to spend a little more time with these people while we have to make this difficult decision. And we need to show that we support their family network. So that's tip number 3. Tip number 4, act as if you're hiring them right now and attract them all over again. You have an open rec for a job role. You've been waiting weeks or months. Oh, by the way, here's a quick little stat for you. Hireology reports that the average dealership, we'll just talk about dealerships right now, when they receive a resume, it's 10 days before anyone even calls them after receiving an application or a resume. Most of us have had hiring needs in the past. So we've got to think about this going forward. Now, if we are acting like we're hiring and wanting to attract them all over again, let's take a look at what we need to do. We need to provide them with upbeat but honest reports, honest communications for what's going on, but upbeat. Hey, this thing happens. We had this victory in service today. Today we delivered groceries to someone. We sold 12 cars through the telephone today. Whatever's going on, give them some upbeat reports so your workplace sounds appealing to them. Be honest with all those communications, because you want to know they're saving everything and they're reviewing it with a fine-tooth comb. Note any changes for the better that are happening. If you start to see some differences happening let's say with maybe how you're going to roll out benefits or something for the future, let them know. Please keep offering them helpful resources. There are very local resources available for people, whether it's for financial aid or career counseling or learning and libraries and whatever. Any helpful resources in the community, let them know. Personal approach. It's very important that you keep these conversations feeling very personal for them, okay? So don't sound all corporate-y, sound like you're talking right to them. Even more so, it's very important that a leadership person be in contact. Their direct manager or the one above them should be reaching out from time to time to see how they're doing. A final thing to think about is community efforts. I've heard some really inspiring stories, some vendor companies who, even though they have this community effort on the books, or it's a new thing that they were going to do because of this crisis, people that were furloughed even asked if they could still join in and contribute as part of a company that they loved towards a cause that was helpful in their community. So these things will continue. All of this rolled up will help create a greater bond for your people, even when they can't be around your people. And remember, that's one thing that I don't have on here. These people are missing a sense of community with their coworkers. So encourage them to be talking to people that they worked with before and keep those relationships that they love going. Remember, it was hard to find these people, and it was even harder to keep them and grow them. You spent a lot of time, money, and human resources, and they didn't all make it. So better to invest in the customer, which in this case is the employee that you had, even if they're on the bench right now, than trying to find new ones. It's much more cost effective and time effective as well. Tip number 5, keep your people motivated. And this includes your displaced team and your in-place team. I'll let you read through these things on your own, but I'll give you some highlights. You've got to keep them motivated. Treat them like you'd like to be treated. Be honest. Share the situation. Identify what's positive. Focus on the future. Teach them how they can do more work with less, and share the workload. Do not put an undue burden on the people that are still in place. Kind of a difficult, I got a call last night from someone who they're being asked to work almost a full-time schedule, even though they've been furloughed, and they've been told that that would put them in a good position for getting rehired. Well, my friends, not only is that illegal, it's just a terrible business practice. And these people, I trust you this, that employee loyalty is completely eroded. They will lose this employee as soon as that employee can find another job elsewhere. For those of you who aren't working currently, all of this applies, but get them thinking positively about where they worked, what they did, their commitment, and I would use the word purpose also here. Oh, tip number 6, leaders, are you ready? Yeah, it's time for this conversation. We're going to review leadership starting with you. So starting at the very top in our 12 o'clock, moving towards 1 o'clock position, yeah, it's time for us to talk about this. Whether you're the owner or a manager, start with a brutally honest assessment of yourself and your current performance. And ask yourself, how have I handled this from an outside-in perspective? How well equipped was I? What should I have done? Be really honest. Don't beat yourself up, but do be honest and make some clear notes for yourself. Next, ask yourself, what new skills have I acquired in the last 12 months? Or like Joe Verdi says, do you have 20 years of experience or 1 year 20 times over? Next, ask yourself, how effective am I really being in my role lately? Am I getting caught up in urgent things all the time and not handling what's most important? Another thing to ask is, would I earn the same money in another industry based on my skills? And could I be hired into another industry based on my skills? Next, I'd have you think about, are we growing and developing our people? Are we operating at or above what's expected of us? And how would my team and my coworkers and colleagues describe me? So yes, keep going through the loop and ask yourself which 2 or 3 things on here you need to focus on the most, because any change needs to start right at home. Now look around you, leaders. Look around you, look above you. What changes do we probably need to put in place for our leaders going forward? First thing would be hiring practices for critical roles. We'll take a look at some sales manager or GM dialogue in just a minute here. It's kind of fun. We'll next take a look at expectations for continuous growth. Other than taking perfunctory classes that the manufacturer or our company puts out? What other things are our people doing? And do we have a culture of growth in our minds? Talent mobility is next. I've got that little fish there. Are you the fish that can only live in one fishbowl, or could you easily jump from one fishbowl to another, covering different positions in the dealership or the vendor organization that you're with? I'm not saying all of them at once, but just, do you have any fluidity and mobility to your skills? Next, how about this? Time in the role. Should we start employing some term limits around here? Can I get a heck yes? So there are people that are great in their role and they only get bigger and better and more effective. And some people sit in that chair, they think it's the pinnacle, and they start decaying before they even start doing the job. So next, start measuring what matters with people development, and that includes your leaders. And the culture thing at your place, is it positive or maybe not so much? So it's important, because you can look out your window when you're the dealer or the owner of a business and say, the culture's great. Well, first of all, everybody kisses your fanny. Second of all, you have the best office. You probably have, at least in their mind, the best schedule. You probably get paid the best. And then if you want to go to a golf outing with a vendor or a client, you can do so. Ask yourself, what is the culture really like here for my people? Get down grassroots and find out. So going above and beyond, this is the perfect time to set some new guidelines and expectations for your leaders. This is an imaginary conversation with a GM or a sales manager, but it's not really that imaginary. This also applies to our vendor world too. So look at this. So most people want to sit there and talk about like how many units they sold, or that one big deal and it was a 5-pounder, or you knocked somebody's head off taking all their money, or you signed up a big dealership organization and the paycheck that you got from that. Let's get away from those singular wins and very one-dimensional conversations. Let's also move past to thinking like this. We need some bodies around here. And let's think about what type of people and what type of attributes and what are we doing, our own personal interest in developing them, our own commitment to doing so. Next, I'd have you think about going beyond that. Oh, I've been doing this for 27 years without growing. And so those people typically are very stagnant. They're not learning. They'll send people to classes, but they won't go themselves. And if they do go, it's actually counterproductive, because they're in the back of the room, guffawing, if you will, sighing, rolling their eyes, arms crossed, or they're not even paying attention, or they leave the room every 5 minutes. Next, it's time to move beyond that conversation of only remembering that best month you had ever, that one good month. You are not your best month. You're also not your worst month. But so let's get beyond asking those questions, especially in the hiring environment. If we have any managers in any of our automotive industry that says things like, oh, this team handles that, or this team handles that, and so they don't need to know, and they're avoiding going forward with learning about our new digital and customer landscape, that's a 5-alarm fire. You need to get a new person in that role, and certainly don't hire someone right now like that. We've also got to get away from conversations like, we powered through the last 5 days of the month. You know, we didn't have a strategy for the other 25, but we worked bell to bell and we powered through it and we got it done. They probably gave away so much money in the last 3 days. If you look at your balance sheet, you would be shocked, embarrassed, destroyed if you took a look at how much money you lose in the last 3 days at most dealerships and even most vendor organizations, rather than how much you put on the books. We've also got to take a look at paying differently. We have leaders on our teams that are being paid far more than they would earn in other industries. It's time to reset that and redistribute some of that money. I'm not talking about socialism here, but it's time to redistribute some of that money as our sales teams are suffering everywhere. So tip number 7, I'm not going to talk a whole lot about this because you can read up on best places to work for everybody, everywhere. But right now, if you want to be a best place to work, that does not mean the best dealership in town. That means the best place in town to work. So act now like these people, again, are a candidate you would love to hire. Give them more reasons than ever why they'll want to return to your dealership or your vendor company. They're exploring many options right now. They had to. Don't tell them they shouldn't. They had to. Let them choose to come back to you. Look at what healthy businesses outside of automotive are doing to attract top talent. Let's take a look at hours, pay, compensation, and benefits, growth opportunities, culture at the ground level, and managers' capabilities and helpfulness. So going back one. So reviewing our tips. They're emotional, it's personal, handle with care. The burden's on you, not them. Their friends and family are the influencers. Act as if you're hiring and attract them all over again. Keep them motivated. Review your leadership team. It starts with you, and become a best place to work. Today, just before we went live, I added a few more words and thoughts because I thought they were missing from this conversation and should be added. Empathy goes a long ways. Being kind is one thing, but empathy, like really understanding their situation and acting accordingly. Next, you really want to decide what your strategy is going to look like as you begin to redeploy and reintroduce people, and how that integration process is going to go. Make better plans going forward using new strategies for future disruptions, and always use that ACT formula to do so. Evaluate how your company is handling this all honestly from many fronts, with your clients, with your stakeholders if you have them, and investors, with your leaders, and of course with the people on the front line. And then always SWOT it out. Making a strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threat grid is always a great idea, no matter what is at hand. So now that you're familiar with the 7 tips on how to do, go back now, assess where you are, work on your communications, and seek transformation. So that's all what I'm asking you to do, and that's what I'm trying to help you to do with best practices and tips. It's time for you to tell me what I can do for you. Here is what I'll tell you we're doing right now. Conversations like this, complementary to an industry that I love and have served for 22 years. The client retention, if any of you would like to see that from the last several days, I'd be glad to send that to you. Next week, we're going to launch simultaneously a leadership event and also a unique employment event featuring people who have been displaced. I take calls on request. I am offering 30-minute conversations with your leaders on what to do, how to do it, bounce ideas around. I can only take so many of those because I'm busy, but I'll take at least a handful a weekend. I'm doing those on the weekend. Collaboration and support with businesses. More than ever, it's the 80-20 rule. 80% of people are showing up big and strong and powerfully, asking how they can help me, asking how I can help them, because they've seen my Better Together principle, my operating system, and they believe in it. And I'm so proud of that. There's so much better together going on out there. And I'll continue thought leadership and share. I did have a few resources today. They'll be available in the deck afterwards so that you can read through. That Randstad study was really good. Mike, thanks again for joining us yesterday. And if you'd like to get a hold of me for one-on-one help or for help with your organization or your teams, here's the information that you do so. Like I said, there is massive information that I'm offering in a group setting that I'm doing complimentary. We can discuss what it looks like if I need to come to your store or location or speak with your teams. And again, you can let your leaders know and yourself know that these 30-minute complimentary calls to discover what's going on and try to strategize a little bit. I'm pretty good at listening, assessing, and you'll get a feeling for how quickly I can help you sort through some difficult challenges. You'll also see that sometimes just having someone that you trust, that you know cares about you and knows the industry, just having that listening ear, sometimes you talk yourself into the solution yourself. So we've gone a few extra minutes here, but I had added some material that I hope was extra helpful. So I want to thank you all for taking the time to join us today. 7 tips to maintaining employee loyalty in the midst of furloughs and layoffs. Think differently about your people, the ones that have been displaced, the ones that are still in place. Think differently about your leadership, think differently about your clients, and look at this as an opportunity that we will get to the other side the more powerfully we act using our ACT and then proven programs. We will get through it better together. So thank you so much for taking the time to join in. I know I've said it a couple times, but I appreciate your time. I know how busy you all are, and I wish you a wonderful and successful day and weekend. Have a wonderful day, everyone. Thank you for joining Foster Strategies Group. This was a special industry update, 7 tips to maintain employee loyalty in the midst of furloughs and layoffs. It's important as a company that we offer you the best that we can in client retention and employee retention, and we hope this was helpful today. Have a wonderful day.